Professional wrestling is kind of like a circus. There's something for everyone. If you don't like the clowns, maybe you're into acrobats. If they don't do it for you, maybe you'll enjoy the animal acts. Here you got technical wrestling, amazing aerial feats, or as Big E so eloquently put it, big meaty men slapping meat. And you've got comedy. Some of it is amazing, like the time Kurt Angle absolutely wrecked the Alliance with a milk bath, or Steve Austin soothing Vince McMahon's soul with a creepy version of Kumbaya, Daniel Bryan and Kane going through anger management. However, sometimes it's just gross. Really, really gross. I'm Senior Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 disgusting WWE moments. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a big leg on that notification bell. Number 1. If ifs and buts. It's tough to separate Vince McMahon, the father of modern-day sports entertainment, from Vince McMahon, the alleged sex criminal, and it's even tougher to separate those things when we're talking about something like the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club. The Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club was one of the most infamous and controversial storylines in WWE history. It was a reoccurring segment where the WWE chairman would force his employees, wrestlers, and even commentators to literally kiss his bare backside as a form of humiliation and dominance. And as we discuss this horrific series of moments, try not to imagine that this gimmick probably owes its inspiration to Vince McMahon desperately wanting to put people like Bob Costas in his place. The club was introduced on the November 19th, 2001 episode of Monday Night Raw, shortly after the WWE defeated the Alliance at the Survivor Series 2001 pay-per-view. With his power solidified, McMahon used the segment as a way to assert control over his employees. The first inductee was William Regal, who had recently turned from being an ally of McMahon's to a desperate employee trying to keep his job. Under duress, Regal complied and kissed McMahon's exposed buttocks. But unfortunately, Mr. Regal would not be the last member. Jim Ross would be inducted a week later when The Undertaker turned heel. Shawn Michaels would save his old pal Marty Jannetty from becoming a member back in 2006, but Shane McMahon would attack Shawn Michaels and force him to join. Shawn would gain a measure of revenge at WrestleMania when he would force Shane McMahon to join. And if you're doing the math, that's a man's son kissing his bare rear end. Classy. Hornswoggle and Mick Foley had their unfortunate moments as well. Also, this is the kind of stuff that's always happening when non-wrestling fans walk into the room, right? It's never something cool. Now, kissing another person's rear end is admittedly gross, unless, that's your thing. We don't try to kink shame here. However, all of that would pale in comparison to when DX would get revenge on McMahon for all of these tush-centric activities at the 2006 Unforgiven pay-per-view, which, quick aside, was kind of a packed card for a non-Big Four event. You've got Trish Stratus winning the women's title from Lita in a retirement match. You've got John Cena and Edge in a TLC bout for the world title. And in Hell in a Cell, you got Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and The Big Show facing the DX team of Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Now, towards the end of the bout, DX would knock out The Big Show, drape him bent over the top rope, lower his shorts, then induct Vince into the Bury Your Face into the Big Show's Ass Club, while also inducting us into the Why Do We Watch Wrestling Club? Number 2. Now, before you say anything, yes, I've totally used that number 2 bit before, but hey, joke recycling is good for the environment. This probably isn't going to come as a surprise to you, but there's going to be a lot of Vince McMahon on this list, and with a human as eccentric as Vince, there are a lot of tall tales. One time, Vince stole the shoes of an NBC executive while they were bowling. Vince allowed the whole roster to hit him with their finishers at a gentleman's club. And my personal favorite, Vince McMahon doesn't know what burritos are. Former WWE creative team member Dave Madigan tells a story where he pitched an angle where the Big Show would eat a spiked burrito, but Vince shot down the idea because he didn't know what a burrito was and thought the audience wouldn't know what it was either. best part of the story is that Vince McMahon was eating a burrito while he was saying all this, although it was really pieces of steak and ketchup wrapped in a tortilla, so maybe like the loosest possible definition for a burrito, but a burrito nonetheless. Now, Big Show would get his burrito during his feud with Eddie Guerrero, as on the October 2nd, 2003 episode of SmackDown, Big Show would intercept Eddie's burrito delivery and eat them all. You can probably guess where this is going, but he'd then come down with some gastrointestinal distress issues during a match. When he retreated to the restroom, Latino Heat would show up, steal the toilet paper, and hilarity would ensue. Steak wrap made him crap! The fecal feud would continue the following week with Eddie eschewing his usual lowrider for a sewage truck. Wow, what does it gotta be like when you're ringside and like a beer truck or a milk truck or a sewage truck pulls up? You signed up for wrestling, not a Gallagher show. You see, kids, Gallagher was, as you'd expect, the big finish was Show being doused with what we were to believe was raw sewage. But as Eddie would reveal in his book Cheating Death and Stealing Life, it was just dog food mixed with water, which isn't as bad as feces, but it's still pretty gross. And kudos to the Big Show for hitting the classic heel slips into a puddle of the gross thing bump. You love it. Number 3, Booker, toss your cookies. Now, we've talked about the stink face quite a bit here at 7 Wrestling. Its origin was a bit of tomfoolery at a house show where a fan shouted out for Rikishi to put his ample posterior in the big boss man's face. The boss man seemed down with it, the crowd went insane, and the rest is history. We've talked about how Rikishi would have 2 different pairs of tights he would wear, a clean one and a less clean one, and the pair he would wear that evening would depend on how he felt about you. Now, despite its ridiculous nature, the move became an integral part of WWE entertainment, and honestly, a who's who of top names felt the business end of Rikishi's rear end. Folks like The Rock, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, all of whom sold the move as if they'd just been hit with a garbage bag full of dirty diapers. But it's one stink face that stands out, stands out among all the others, that being the one that took place on the January 10th, 2002 episode of SmackDown. It started innocently enough with Booker T brushing his teeth in the men's room. Dental hygiene is very important. However, coming from one of the stalls where the sounds one usually hears when the Big Show has stolen Eddie Guerrero's burritos. Call back. Booker T was absolutely horrified when Rikishi emerged from the stall after what he claimed was his pre-match ritual. He was even more horrified when he learned that he himself was Rikishi's opponent for the night. The match would go as expected, with the Samoan Sumo getting Booker T down in the corner and hitting him with his signature maneuver. However, instead of every other match where this happens, Booker would crawl out of the ring retching, head over to the announce table, and spin-a-rooney his lunch all over Michael Cole. And look at these people behind Cole who got sprayed with the shrapnel. They were probably bragging all day about what good seats they had. Number 4, nasty indeed. The stink face isn't the only example of a maneuver that is legitimately disgusting. After Mr. Socko became a thing at Vince McMahon's bedside, McFoley would pull the sock out of his pants before using it as an accessory to the mandible claw. However, originally he would wear the sock to the ring under his shoe, then when the time was right, take it off his sweaty foot, put it on his hand, and then proceed to place it into somebody's mouth. Entertainment. I'd imagine people don't feel wonderful about themselves after getting hit with X-Pac's Bronco Buster. The mysterious mist is basically someone just spitting colored water in your face. Oh, and don't even get us started on what happens in Japanese wrestling. But one of the predecessors of the gross wrestling move industry has to be the best tag team ever to have their name inspired by a Janet Jackson song. We're of course talking about the Nasty Boys. Brian Knobbs and Jerry Saggs, the pride of Allentown, of Nastyville, didn't do much for me, just kind of big lumbering brawlers, which is a shame, because the first time I ever saw them, they tore the house down with the Steiner brothers at Halloween Havoc 1990. That match is definitely worth your time. However, what puts them on this list is a little maneuver they do where they'd stick their opponent's face in their sweaty armpits. This delightful stratagem was known as Pit Stop or Pity City, depending on who you asked. Who knew these brutes were so adept at wordplay? But if they were hoping to stick with the Janet Jackson theme, on her album Demita Joe, she did have a song titled Moist. Number 5, Got the Guts. Last week we did a video on wrestlers who were terrible singers, and I got some real heat from people who think that I was saying that John Cena's Bad Bad Man was a bad song. I don't. I love me some rap music, and that song is very reminiscent of a fun time in rap history. Your mileage may vary. I enjoy the song. I was, however, using that song as a way to get to the cover of the album, which was the first we'd ever see of the Spinner WWE title, and I used that as a roundabout way of saying that that's what made the album bad. So if you're keeping score at home, Bad Bad Man good, Cena Spinner title bad. And in researching all of that, I'd forgotten the hullabaloo that went with the unveiling of that new belt. Now, in the previous year, 2004, John Cena had claimed the United States Championship, and he retired what I thought was a pretty cool design to debut the first ever Spinner Championship. Haha, look at it spin! I thought it was kinda dumb, but apparently kids absolutely adored it. Apparently the replicas of the damn thing flew off of toy shelves across the country. Now, in the build-up to John Cena's world title shot against JBL at WrestleMania 21, Cena would lose the US title to Orlando Jordan due to some outside interference. So, on the March 10th, 2005 episode of SmackDown, JBL would destroy the Spinner US belt and replace it with the previous design. Wait a minute, that's supposed to make him a bad guy? Cena would go on to defeat JBL for his first of what would be 16 world titles and, potentially more, at WrestleMania 21. And when the Doctor of Thugonomics was ready to unveil his new version of the world title, JBL would intercept the box that was holding the belt as if it were a bag full of steak wraps being sent to Eddie Guerrero. Or at least we thought that's what JBL had done. When he cracked open the box, he discovered all manner of goopy entrails. Cena would then go on to say that he'd ordered something special from JBL from the best slaughterhouse in Chicago. He wanted to give the man who had everything the one thing that he lacked, guts. And JBL was polite enough to stumble and retch long enough for Cena to walk down the ramp and dump the box all over JBL's head. Ho! There's JBL with the good heel slip and fall from the gross item. That makes 2 this episode. Anyhow, none of that would be as stomach-turning as what John Cena would reveal later that evening. Number 6. Bucket List. Trish Stratus wrestled this past weekend and did a pretty damn good job of it at the ripe old age of 49 years old. With all those retirements and returns, she's kind of like a hot Terry Funk. And what a dream talent she's been for the company. She never causes any problems. She doesn't pop up in AEW. Whenever she returns, she puts over the big names like Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch. And even when reporters bring up the crap she had to put up with during the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression eras, she does a pretty good job of putting all of that into context. Great example of that is the controversial Bark Like a Dog segment. Now, one of the most unbelievable moments in WWE history took place on the March 5th, 2001 episode of Monday Night Raw when Vince McMahon forced Trish Stratus to bark like a dog in the middle of the ring. This segment, which has since been widely criticized, was a defining and degrading moment of the Attitude Era's over-the-top storytelling. At the time, Trish Stratus was playing the role of Vince McMahon's on-screen mistress, who was drugging his wife Linda to keep her in a vegetative state. This led to a power struggle between Trish and Vince's daughter Stephanie. When Trish's usefulness to Vince had apparently run its course, he decided to humiliate her in front of a live audience. He ordered her to strip down to her underwear and get on all fours, barking like a dog while he berated her. The crowd was split, some relishing the shock factor of the Attitude Era, while others were visibly uncomfortable with the degrading spectacle. Something that seems to get lost in the scandal of this moment is that it was set up that Trish was storming to the ring to get revenge on Vince for a previous attack. And her immediately caving to Vince and apologizing to him was the character's way of setting him up for a fall at WrestleMania. She'd pretend to be subservient to stay in Vince's good graces, all the while lowering the doses of medication they were giving Linda. Then at the key moment, Trish would turn on Vince, Linda would rise from her wheelchair, and good would prevail over evil. And that previous attack we were talking about that gets lost in all of this was pretty foul. On the February 26, 2001 episode of Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon, William Regal, and Stephanie McMahon would assault Trish, eventually dousing her in gross mop bucket liquid. What was it? Who knows? Dog food and water? Again, maybe. At any rate, it was horrific. But you know, a week earlier, Trish had stuffed Stephanie's face in cow manure and dumped raw sewage over her head, so maybe she had it coming. Man, Attitude Era was wild. Number 7, like a pig in... WWE has a long history of pushing the boundaries of creativity and sanity when it comes to match types. While fans love a good ladder match or Hell in a Cell, there have been times when the company decided to throw logic out the window and give us some of the weirdest, most head-scratching match stipulations ever conceived. You've got Kennel in a Cell, where the Hell in a Cell cage is placed on top of a ring with a standard cage, and then they put dogs around the ringside area, and the dogs are supposed to be rabid and angry, but you can't really do that, so just kind of like calm dogs that, were kind of fornicating with each other. You got the Punjabi prison, which was like a weird bamboo fortress that was difficult to see into. Not that you would have wanted to see any of the matches that took place in there anyways. The eggnog match, where Santa's little helpers battled it out in a dairy product that had been sitting around unrefrigerated for hours. And finally, you've got the Arkansas Hog Pen match that took place at the December 1995 In Your House pay-per-view. The battle between the Connecticut Blue Blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley and the hog farmer Henry O'Godwin was contested under very simple rules. Whoever was the first person to toss their opponent into a pen filled with live hogs would win the match. Hunter would pick up the win, managing to back body drop Henry into the muddy enclosure, but Henry would get the last laugh when he would toss Triple H into the pen. And if you're not sure what we're getting at with this, to quote Jerry Lawler, everything brown in there is not mud. So what's worse than the smell of live defecating livestock? Well, when Triple H did his heel duty and slipped and fell while he was being embarrassed, hey, that's 3 this episode. Hat trick. Sorry, when Triple H slipped and fell, he'd throw handfuls of the mud and crap into the audience, just flinging poo everywhere. Ah well, other wrestling bookers have done way worse. Well, there's our list. Did we forget any other disgusting WWE moments? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit Stratusfaction on that notification bell. Until next time, I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.